You're watching Coping with COVID-19 with Chris Manners. Today's special guest is Ivar Satero.
Hi, I'm Chris Manners, and you're watching Coping with COVID-19. Today, my guest is Ivar Satero. He's the director of the San Francisco International Airport, and he's here today to talk to us about how SFO has been weathering the pandemic, the safety measures that have been put into place, and to briefly touch on the future of airline travel. Mr. Satero, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Chris. Good to be here.
Now, I know airlines and airports have been particularly hard hit during this crisis. How has SFO managed during this pandemic? And what measures have you put in place to protect passengers and employees?
It's hard to believe we've been at this now for 10 months. And it's incredible to think about the kind of devastation that's happened to our industry. But we've managed through it, I think, just really well. And early on, it was clear that we needed to be a primary source for information for people arriving into San Francisco. And so we really took that on and put together a really robust program of a media as well as just announcements in our facilities. And we're really focusing on informing the public what they should expect when they flew into San Francisco and through SFO. And our priority is always the safety and security of our passengers and our employees. And this certainly challenged us in a whole way that we never could have imagined. But, for starters, it was about physical distancing. And we were fortunate to have very spacious facilities. We've invested in our terminals over the past 25 years and have really allowed for an environment that we were able to create space and allow for the physical distancing and face mask wearing. Really those three priorities when you talk about also having hand sanitizers. But we were the first airport to actually enforce face mask wearing, and it started with our employees, and then we expanded it to the traveling public. And we developed and implemented our own hand sanitizer stations, and we're really focused on a healthful, hygienic experience in our terminals, and one that built confidence in the traveling public that we were taking all the measures to protect their best interest. And so, I think there's a lot of interest in what we've done. We've been involved at a national and a global level. Really, it was about that protecting of our passengers and our employees and being flexible and able to respond as conditions changed.
I imagine that would include signage as well.
Yes, signage and announcements. So we put together our own SFO program of signage about mask compliance, about physical distancing, and about the right things to do, about washing your hands and using hand sanitizer and those kinds of things were all important and part of our messaging. And even over our loudspeakers, as I said, our public address system, we've been messaging since the beginning about the importance of the safety of all of these measures.
That's great. Is there an effort among airports to pool information and come up with universal guidelines for air travel? And how is SFO involved?
Yes, there is. And I feel like this pandemic has brought us all together more as an industry. And we're involved in a couple different layers of the industry. We're involved at a global scale with 8 other global airports, and we're sharing best practices with them. We're also involved in many of the work groups around COVID preparedness and COVID response with U.S. large hub airports. And so this really is an industry changing moment. And SFO, we want to be in that role of helping define what the future looks like. And I have to say that, passengers want a consistent experience, and they have the right to expect a consistent experience because it's just, we have to all be using similar protocols. So there's preparedness and there's an expectation of what is going to be the requirements at both ends of travel. And so, we've been working on something called an air information hub that could be that source of information for travelers to go to find out what's happening, updated by the airports and the airlines. So there's the understanding of what's required as they travel.
Now, this is typically the busiest time of year for traveling. How is Thanksgiving, and what do you expect for the rest of the holiday season?
Yeah, it was Thanksgiving was unlike any other Thanksgiving that we've ever seen. And with the health orders and the travel advisories and things going into effect, we again saw a primary role of being that point of information. I believe we had more traffic than we have had throughout the crisis. Our busiest day, we had 20,000 outbound passengers, which would have been 80,000, but that's more than what we've had since the crisis began. And so we see this continuing trend of extremely low traffic volumes throughout the holiday period. And even as more orders go into effect, it's going to continue to depress travel. So we see more of the same happening. No real uptick, and likely there will be further cancellations.
Right. In the future, what changes can we expect to see for air travel? Can you talk a little bit about the plans to implement rapid testing in the international terminal and recent speculation about vaccine visas?
Yeah, it's all evolving and interesting about what the future of air travel looks like, and we certainly want to be on the front end of defining what that is. And as I talked about early on, it's about restoring passenger confidence, and that should be the priority of our entire industry, to get people comfortable with flying again. And so, what does that new normal look like? And I think the first thing is that expectation when you come to an airport, you have a safe experience. And we did a survey of our passengers, and SFO was rated a 4.3 out of 5 based on all the preparations that we have in place around physical distancing and messaging and mask wearing compliance and all of those things. So that is just the first priority is the safety of the facility, and then testing is, I think, also part of our future, and our testing has been very well received, and it's compelling the success, and again building confidence by having tested flights where people, before entering destinations, if they're required to get a test to avoid a quarantine, our on-site testing has been very effective, particularly in those Hawaii flights that we've worked with United on. And we've seen that because the planes are fuller. They're 70% full instead of 40% full because there's a testing element to it. And then I think that is a framework that's going to be important for the foreseeable future. Tests at airports, but ultimately just COVID-free flights through testing protocols that are consistent and applied at both ends of travel. And then you talk about credentialing and vaccination. And I think that is the next evolution of this, is that you will be required to show your health credentials and verify that you've been vaccinated. And if you haven't been vaccinated, as we go through this transition, that testing is available, and there's confirmation that people are COVID free. I think that is all part of the future of what travel looks like, at least in the next several years, I'm imagining. But also, it's about preparedness for the long term too. And this pandemic is likely not the only pandemic we'll see. And so I think there's this preparedness and technology preparedness that's going to help us be more resilient in the future.
Finally, could you explain the AirBridge initiative to us?
So the AirBridge concept, which we've been working on with this group of global airports, is testing protocols at both ends of a journey. So there's a certainty that there's not a spread of the virus by arriving passengers. So if we could develop policies and protocols that provide for this, and airline partners that we work with that help enforce this, and obviously governmental support for these things, then I think it will help mitigate the spread and have that assurance that flying is not contributing to local spread of the virus. So what it requires is testing potentially at both ends. There's been one trial between London Heathrow and New York, New Jersey, and we are working on trials as well. With our testing on site, there's a lot of interest. We've been getting a lot of calls from well, a lot of airports that are trying to catch up with having testing at their facilities, but a lot of airlines interested in leveraging our testing to different destinations. And so we have actually Cathay Pacific. We are doing testing with Air India. We're doing some level of testing, and we're working with United on these kind of branded COVID-free flights.
Well, that's great. Thanks so much, Mr. Satero. I really appreciate the time you've given us today. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks, Chris. I'm glad to be here and glad to talk about what's going on at SFO with what we're all managing through. So thanks so much.
Well, that's it for this episode. We'll be back with more pandemic-related information shortly. You've been watching Coping with COVID-19. For SFGovTV, I'm Chris Manners. Thanks for watching.